Billy Harvey.
Hey there, this is Rob Ruckus.
Hey, it's Tony from Fastball.
Hey, it's Ben McKelvey.
Hey guys, it's Matt here from the White Lakes.
What's up everybody, Jacob from The Big News.
Hey guys, it's Nick Collins here from The Effect and Better Strangers.
Check me out at Almost Famous Magazine.
Buzzing film our clips to be dropping on Almost Famous Magazine.
Check out Almost Famous Magazine.
You can find more clips from my interview with Almost Famous Magazine.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Hey there, and welcome back to Conversations on Almost Famous Magazine. We've got a very special guest with us today, someone I've known a few years now that as life takes you, sometimes you meet people haphazardly. I met Keith Semple, who's with us today. Well, he was opening up for, I think it was Riverside here in Dallas, Texas. And I happen to be wearing a Mike and the Mechanics t-shirt. And I think that's what got the conversation started. And we can even tell that story a little bit. But Keith, welcome. It's great to have you here today to talk about the new Cyberiam album and your musical journey.
Thanks, Scott. And I got to say that I've really appreciated your support since we've met. You know, you've just been like, wow, I really enjoyed these guys live, and anything I can do to help and get your music out there to the world. And I think that's what all musicians need, right? Is that spreading the word of their music, especially if you believe in it. You believe that's all it takes is the right people to hear the music at the right time, you know?
Oh, I agree. I agree with you. And today more than ever, there are so many choices and there are so many options to consume music that getting out, meeting bands, seeing them live, and really finding ways to support them is the best thing any fan can do for an artist. And I definitely want to talk about how people can support your music, the Cyberiam, as we go through our conversation today. So let's start. We're going to park the Mike and Mechanics story till the end. We'll keep people in suspense, right? The artist suspense that'll make them stick around to watch the whole video. You know, to start the conversation today, the Cyberiam have a new album coming out. This is your third album. Have you got a copy of it there? I'd love to see it. The artwork is amazing.
Of course I do. I'm so proud of this artwork. Let me pull it up. It should focus in a second. There it goes.
I'll be honest with you. I never saw unobtainium in my periodic table of content or periodic table of elements when I was in college.
Well, you didn't learn that? It's number 184? No. No, it definitely isn't. And it's funny because I didn't know when we came up with that was already a thing in the zeitgeist. That's actually from the movies, the Avatar movies.
Oh.
So the thing they're trying to like get from the world that they're trying to, you know, they're killing all these indigenous people is, or I should say aliens, I guess, is this, you know, thing called unobtainium. And I did not know that. So a lot of people have been asking since we've released this title, they've been like, oh, so you really like Avatar? And I was like, actually, no, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor that Brian heard on a podcast. And it's basically about that thing that you're always striving for in your life that you either never get, or when you do, something else just becomes the unobtainium. Maybe it's a goal with your music, or maybe it's just like a guitar you've always wanted. But once you actually get it, then instantly something else becomes that unobtainium, that thing in your life that you feel you might never reach. And that's actually what the album's all about. So it's quite funny that people are thinking it's connected to Avatar.
And you know, I've seen those movies, but I forgot it didn't even dawn on me that was that piece of it. Wow. I've listened to the album a couple times now, and I never put two and two together. But you know, when you think about it, you know, we're almost like driven always that, you know, we want this, but then once we have it, we want that, then we want that. And it's this it's a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle and drive toward things. So that's fascinating. And in a little bit, let's play a little bit of the song for everybody and delve into that a little bit further. But I want to take a step back, right? Let's talk about your musical journey, right? How did you get into music? Did music find you? Where did you start? What has energized you? And take that to where, you know, maybe I think 2018 was when you guys started the band, and then we'll dive into the band. But I want to learn about your musical journeys a little first.
Yeah, it's so weird because anybody that everybody that's come across my music from prog, so they've seen me with Cyberiam, and they've seen me maybe out on tour with, amazing bands like Riverside, The Pineapple Thief, Marillion. It's like they don't know my history and they just accept the music for the music, and that's kind of what I love. But they don't. And then when they find out later that I was actually, in a boy band and had all this other type of music that they, typically hate, they're like, it softens the blow, because they're like, oh, but we really like Cyberiam, so who cares? Whereas if they knew that going in, they would likely be like, oh, what's this guy trying to do? And it's been amazing just how accepting prog fans have been, because they've learned this stuff later about my early career, and I think they're just like, well, that doesn't matter. The music's great. We like it. And that's, so it's weird, because I started off way back at like 9 playing piano, like a lot of people do. And then I was quite good at it, to be honest. Like, I don't mean in any boastful sense, but it was something that my parents were like, oh, he's probably going to end up being some kind of concert pianist type thing. And then I picked up a guitar at 12. And am I allowed to swear on this, Scott? Should I be PG?
Oh. Say whatever you want. We've heard it all.
I was just going to say, I went, fuck that. I want to be a rock star. And that was it. And I was like, oh, I got to play guitar. And my uncle Murray, he taught me guitar then from 13 on, and he has been a musician his whole life. So, and I was lucky because I had like 2 dad role models almost. I had my dad, who was fabulous. He was always, go for it. Whatever you want to do, go for it. And then also my uncle Murray was like a second dad, who would always exposed me to all these amazing bands like Wishbone Ash and and Pink Floyd, and well, just everything basically that I now listen to and consider to be my musical journey. So, and I should say that prog came into my life, though, when we think of prog as being real proggy stuff, was Dream Theater in 1997. I became aware of like Images and Words, and we went on this Spanish holiday, me and my friends, and we literally blasted Images and Words on repeat. I could literally play almost every instrument of every song on that album by the time 2001 came around, because I literally knew it, every note up in here. That's how much I loved that album, and it affected everything going forward. I wrote a lot of prog, but all at the same time, I was still making a living as a pop, rock, and cover artist, which I still do. So there's this weird thing when people find out that I am this big prog nerd. They go, oh, but you play, Ed Sheeran at the weekend. And I'm like, well, yeah, I do. And I love Ed Sheeran too. But I happen to just love prog music way, way, way more. If people wanted to hear prog in the bars, I would be in heaven,
It's interesting because in a recent conversation we had with Smiley Bernard, he talked about being open to all types of music, right? There is no right or wrong music. What resonates with you? Sometimes you're better off actually in listening to and finding a way to enjoy things that aren't in your natural realm of music that you're comfortable with, because it expands your horizon and gives you greater depth. I mean, many people don't know this, but I think it was about 6 months ago, you put out a pop song, like I'm like, wait a minute. Even I was surprised. But it allows you to explore so much musically that it brings extra depth to what you do at the core of like things like the Cyberiam, right? I mean, think of all those influences.
It's funny because I've actually just released my 3rd single this year in the pop rock world. And there'd been a kind of a hiatus. So I've been writing pop music my whole life. I was lucky enough to, in my last band, I wrote 3 Billboard #1, Chicago #1 albums. They did quite well because of our sort of notoriety in this area. And it was all pop rock stuff, kind of Lifehouse, kind of slightly Bon Jovi, but more pop kind of. And I had this hiatus where I was just so concentrating on writing prog with Cyberiam that I sort of looked on it as my Semple band, which is my pop rock band, was just for the business side, and Cyberiam was for the creative side. And I was like, wait a minute, why am I doing that? I've been writing songs since 1996. Like, why am I not just still writing and putting it out there in the world? Because as you were just saying earlier before we got started there about how the market is just like, you can put a song out there in the world now, and the potential for every single human being on earth almost to hear it is, you know, is there if it's done right, you know. And I decided the last year, I was like, I'm just going to write all the stuff that I want to write, and whatever it comes out as, it comes out as. So that the, you know, the first single was kind of had a Dua Lipa vibe, and the second single had a Imagine Dragons vibe, and the third single that just came out there this last week has a Neon Trees vibe, and the next single has a John Mayer vibe, and I've got another 3 or 4 coming out this year, and that couldn't be further than Cyberiam's music. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, anybody that could play any Cyberiam song could play any of those pop songs after maybe 2 listens, type of a thing. Like, we're talking musically, I'd like to think it's creative, but it's a whole other world, you know. But I've realized I need that too, you know. I just want to write, and I love producing. Here I'm in my studio right now, and I love it. And it doesn't matter whether it's prog or pop or whatever. I'm just going to keep doing it. So it makes me happy.
No, that's awesome. And you've had a career that's really spanned a lot of genres. Going back to that Mike and Mechanics shirt, you had actually sang the Living Years at one point, right? Was that the story you told me?
Oh, that might be one of my best musical performance memories. So I've done, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 times I've got to do a thing called Young Voices. It's a huge concert arena thing where all the kids in the local areas in the cities will learn the set list for 3 months before we do the show. And if you imagine an arena, but the back third of the arena is a children's choir, so up to 8,000 to 10,000 kids all singing in 2-part harmonies at the same time, singing with you. And of course, the first year I ever did it was 21 years ago now. I sang on the first tour, and we did Mike and the Mechanics' Living Years, which, as anybody who knows the song knows, it has a children's choir in it. So it was the most perfect song. And also my voice is very similar to Carrick's in that way. You know, it's very kind of rocky and raspy, but clear if I want it to be clear type of a feel. And so it was like a dream come true to me to perform that live in front of literally hundreds of thousands of people over a 10 or 12 arena tour. I look back over my whole career, and that's got to be in the top 5.
See, everybody, that just shows you. Wear a band's t-shirt to another band's show, and you never know where the conversation started. Everything with Keith started just with that one band and him performing that one song. Let's fast forward a little bit and tell us the story about how you met Brian, Tommy, and Frank and became like brothers in Prague. Like, how did that happen? What brought you guys together on a common ground that way?
So it had a really nice start. Frank is, anybody that knows him knows Frank is the nicest person in the musical industry. Like, he knows everybody from J-Lo to, you know, you know, obviously he's good friends with Jordan from Dream Theater, and you name it, he has met them and has respect from them. They will always return his call, type of a thing. He's just a wonderful guy. And we're standing in the foyer of the Chicago Theater for my first ever Dream Theater show, right? 2016. And all I hear is this person shout, "Keith Semple!" And the place goes dead silent, right? And everybody's like, there's going to be a fight. That's everybody's first thought, right? And they sort of, I look up to see who it is, and the people around me register that that's me, and the people around him all go quiet because they see him, and he shouts, and there's a pause, and he just goes, "I want to play keyboards for you." And I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, Frank, right? And we came over. There was Vic Salazar that runs a famous drum shop here in Chicago, and a bunch of other people. We just got chatting, and Frank was like, "I hear you do prog as well. Like, you're into prog." I was like, "Are you kidding me? That's why I'm here." And he's like, "Do you want to come and meet Jordan and the band after the show?" I'm like, "Duh." And it was incredible. So it was it was an incredible start. And then I'd already written a whole bunch of the first album already. And then Frank came in and, you know, did his magic on it. Do you want me to keep going about how the next part of how we
bring Brian and Frank into the
okay, so
Brian and Tommy into the conversation? Yeah,
so,
for sure. How'd you all come together?
So me and Brian had me and Frank, had written a whole bunch of songs by that point. He had sort of taken what I'd done and added the cool pianos and things, and then my guitar player at the time in Semple was playing in a like a country crossover cover band, and Tommy was drumming for them. And I started talking to Tommy. I was like, "Do you want to be part of an original project?" And that was literally it. He joined us and started. And then he said about Brian had been in his past things, other bands he'd been in and played, and thought he'd have a really good ear. And then I remember we were working on the song Juxtaposer, which is one of the first songs I wrote for Cyberiam. And I had written pretty much the whole song, but that middle part where it changes, I had this idea and it just didn't feel right. And Brian came in his first time in and goes, I was like, "Where are we at?" or whatever. And I played him the song. He's like, "Oh, I really like that." And he's like, so I was like, "I want it to break down here and I want a bass run, but I don't want it to be what we did before." And I remember him just sitting there wheedling, trying something, and it just popped right out. And I was like, "Let's put that in 7." And he was like, "Let's change that one note." And it was just like, oh my God, you know. And he's like, I was like, "You're hired." And the rest was history. And now me and Brian work pretty much like this as kind of the runners of the band in a way. You know, Brian has done all the graphics up until this album at least, and all the big screen stuff that goes in the back of the performances and all. He does so much work for the band. Now he's got a full-time job. It's kind of, we've had this sort of rearrange a little bit, but with my band doing so well that I might have more time, I decided I would learn how to do all this stuff, and hence the you know, the really cool graphics on this. And we wanted to go a completely different way with this artwork to make it like really stripped down, really basic and stand out. And I just want to give props while I'm on that to my friend Kelly, who actually like took my ideas, my mock-ups, and made them like presentable, because she is like the person who can actually do graphic design and make all of what's up in here actually transpire to look as good as I want it to. I could do a pretty good mock-up, but it's not going to be the thing that's used as the final art, you know. So I just want to put that out there while we're talking.
Absolutely. You know, and you kind of hit on, you know, what Brian brought into the band. And I think you said that Tommy was playing in a country western cover band, drumming in a country. I mean, it sounds like everybody brought different styles and influences together and were able to congeal to create the sound of Cyberiam, which is, you know, it's again, going back to that idea that I think especially aspiring artists sometimes miss out on because they go down an avenue. You brought people with a lot of different influences together to create one singular type of directed sound. What were everybody's, you know, contributions there? You know, what did people bring?
Yeah, because I think what's cool, or at least what I love when I listen back to what we create, is you have Tommy plays drums in one of the biggest Tool tribute bands on the planet. It's called Lateralis, and he can play every Tool song ever written as good as Danny Carey can play it. Like, he's that good, and he plays it to the beat. He has every same pad and cymbal, and everything's the same setup. It's incredible. Even the same artwork on the skins and stuff. And so he brings that what I call the override riff to the band, where we'll be doing a riff in 5 and he'll start playing a riff, an overriding beat in 7. And it might not re-catch round to the bar, you know, till 30 beats later or 35 beats later type of a thing. He brings that kind of craziness of just incredible timing knowledge to the band. And then you've got Brian, who basically is a Rush fanatic. So his tone is very guttural and thick and big. And writes in a style that's very like that. And then Frank comes from a very classical world, like Jordan from Dream Theater. They studied together, so he has that. He always wants to go down that neoclassical route, and then you put all that together with me, and I've got this huge pop world. I always want to get back to the melody, but then I want to go wild and then get back to the melody. So I think that's how, when you hear Cyberiam, you'll realize that we kind of love to have these little spurts, but then we love to get back to something that you'll be humming for the next 3 days in your head.
Well, no, that leads me to where I want to go with this conversation. And trust me, that wasn't set up, but you set it up perfectly. Yes. You know, this new album, which is not only a collaboration on the artwork as well as within the band, but it explores some new ground for the band. I mean, this is the first year three albums that has a female singing a lead. You know, her name's Rosie. Tell us the story of how she came in and how you felt that, you know, you got this testosterone-filled 4-guy, you know, prog rock band, right? Where your audience tends to be very male also, to bring in a female voice and add her kind of a softness but an edge to it that you don't normally hear in prog.
It sort of fitted perfectly together, and it wasn't meant to be, I'm not taking away from Rosie at all. It wasn't really meant to be a singing part. It was meant to be a monologue part that's still in the song. If you listen, there's a monologue, because I wrote, the lyrics are about, oh, we got trolls playing in the background.
Sorry about that.
That's another song from our album, by the way.
We're gonna get there in a minute. I accidentally was trying to rerun. Yeah.
No worries. So Are You There is about, I wanted to write a song from the perspective of a little girl who's been kidnapped. And each verse is, the first verse is about right before she's killed, and the second verse is after she's dead. And it's like a after the grave monologue versus a pre being killed monologue. I know it sounds really dark, but I love taking weird concepts and going for it. And originally I was going to have my daughter Rosalind, who's also Rosie, do the monologue, but I realized that it would have sounded almost too fake if it was a little girl's, really young girl's voice. And then Brian was like, why don't we have Rosie do it, as in his stepdaughter do it, who's 15 and an incredible talent on her own. She's just released her own music too, which Brian produced for her. Wonderful artist on her own right. But we had her do the monologue and then had her sing the Are You There lines, the kind of spooky things that we added in. And it's meant to sound spectral and kind of scary. So that's how that came about. And then it was like, oh, wow, she just sounds so good on this. We have to make sure we sprinkle those little parts. And it's actually the only Cyberiam song up until this point, too, that didn't really have a verse. You know, because we just used the monologues as the verses. I don't even sing until the chorus, and it's just like an almost pop rock kind of chorus too. It's very weird how that song comes together. No real guitar solo or anything like that. It's just a really well structured, we'd like to think at least, listenable song.
Well, I'll tell you this, as an opener, you know, I don't know how you decided to sequence the album, but I thought, as listening to it as an opener, it was really dynamic and drew me in for the rest of the experience. I think if it was later in the album, it would have felt a little bit like an afterthought, but it really was like, hey, doing something different. It's not a traditional structure. There's, you know, you don't have a blazing guitar solo. You've got this different feel, and it gives you this sense of, wait a minute, this is really creative. I want more. Like, what's coming up next? So in my opinion, I think it was a great choice for the first song of the album.
Yeah, and actually the riff in that is Frank's little baby in it. So the very start of it is something I always wanted to do with a sort of hit structure kind of it's sort of a Dream Theater-y thing, I guess, where they kind of put structures. They call it, I think they call it a folding riff, where it kind of gets closer and closer in on itself with beats. I'm not sure how to explain it really, but essentially that was Frank's idea, and I was like, man, I don't know if we can we put that in with just that one beat changing each time? It's so crazy. And I was like, of course we can. It's prog. Let's do it. And it's just weird that it starts like that and then goes into this beautiful smooth verse and a beautiful happy, or not happy chorus, but big vocal open noted chorus. I like how that you kind of get a little bit of everything, but a little bit of new stuff that you haven't heard before, all in the first song.
Yeah, no, it was a great way to start. A great way to start the experience. I have picked a couple of other songs that I'd like to go through, and I think to give everyone a little sample, we'll just play a little bit of it. We'll look a little goofy sitting here rocking out ourselves, but we'll get 20 or 30 seconds in just to give a little flavor, and then I want to dive deeper into some of what's on the song. So we will start with Trolls. Sure. I've got that queued up. So let's see if I can hit the button the correct way. There because I want to dive into the ideas around this song, especially coming out of that first track, right? And the story behind it. You know, cyberbullying is kind of, as I understand it, the theme around the song. But tell us, where'd you start with that idea, and where it takes us? Because you say the word bullying, right? And it's you know, it's unfortunately it's a harsh thing. But that song starts so gently. Like, how'd you decide to juxtapose all that together? There's a lot there, but I'm fascinated by the creation of it.
The thing about Trolls is that piece of music and melody is actually the first thing I ever wrote for Cyberiam. The first thing. It's an E minor based riff, and every part of it is open, so the strings stay open while the chords change in between it. It's very cool. And the timing is really weird. It's like 4s, 6s, 5s, 7s, 4s, back. It repeats. But the melody and the vocal melody and the guitar was the first thing I ever wrote. And we've always kind of sat on it thinking, yeah, we'll work on it. And then Brian, for this one, just was like, I have this idea for this. And I loved what he came up with the big chords. And that riff in the middle is, to me, just so badass. I love it when somebody writes a riff that I would never have come up with myself, and then it ends up being part of something we do, because every time it gets to it, I'm like, oh, you can see it when you watch me play live. My face gets scrunched into all these sort of orgasmic spaces where I'm like, oh, I love that note. Oh, because that's how I feel about that riff in the middle of Trolls. And then I felt like it had to have a screaming big melodic solo, and I tried to write something that would challenge me too, so there's kind of a sweeping riff that keeps going and going up, and it took me a while to figure out how I wanted to finger it properly, but it's the subject matter that matters, though. You know, it's about trolls, basically online trolls, and just how ridiculous it's got, that no matter how good a piece of product you put up, there's always one person who has to write something, right? I'll give you an example. We have our Sunset on Mars video up from our last album on YouTube, and it did really well for us, at least, you know, a few thousand views and stuff. And it's all about the concept of 100 years from now, we're taking pictures back from Mars, looking at the sunset with Earth in between, right? It's amazing, because the Mars rover actually took that photo called Sunset on Mars. And there's all these great likes, you know, hundreds of likes and 0 dislikes. And then this one guy the other day posts like post some stupid conspiracy nonsense on it because he just can't resist. He's like, we've never even left the orbit, right? Like even NASA says so. And I just couldn't resist. And I wrote back, I bet you've never left your bedroom. And he all he wrote back was touche. And I was like, wow, that just summed it up. Obviously, I'm not going to hurt. My feelings aren't going to get hurt. I'm past any of that point. But imagine being a young, like preteen or teenager nowadays and growing up in that world, having to deal with that. I can only imagine because I didn't. So.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Before we get to the next song, I'll just say that I was listening to some news yesterday, and they were talking about, if you think about it, younger generation than us, kids who have come up in the last 20, 25 years, how have they learned even our language? And it's mainly through texting, and it's very transactional, and it's very straight to a point, but not conversational. And I see that a lot of that trolling comes from people who tend to be non-conversational. They just want to get to a point. They don't care how it's taken, if it hurts or if it helps. And it's very transactional. It's just boom, and they go. The fact that guy actually said touche says a fair amount about him being able to even take the feedback. Because in this context
that surprised
of
me.
Transactional communication, feedback is harder to take, especially when it's not the feedback that you want or expect. So I think that's going to be a great song for you guys. I'm going to queue up here. Let's see if I can do this.
We were born in 77. We're not Generation X. We're Generation Less. The future's here, but what do we do now? Where's our flying cars and holidays on Mars? We were told as grown-ups we'd save the world. Seems to be a hope.
We got to give them a snippet of the guitar riff here.
Like we just talked about, other generations, expectations, right? We came from trolls, which is what a lot of people are living through these days, into this light and gentle, we had expectations. I mean, we all believed the Jetsons were going to be happening right now, right? And then boom, hit your face that's not our reality. That's how that once you get into the guitars and the drums, you're just like, oh, these gentle promises. Oh, life's going to be great. Like all this stuff. And then we have all these hopes and promises, and then boom, the reality is most of our hopes and promises and dreams and don't even materialize, come crashing down on us. So that's what I'm getting out of it. Am I hitting it right? Am I getting it right on that song?
You definitely are. And the other big thing that Brian wrote all of that song, give or take 95%, and I loved it so much that I said, it's done. Like basically it was like, I think our input was just very minimal with, well, here's an example of how cool Brian is. That solo on the album was my first take overdub just to see what I would do. I mean, no joke. Literally it was, Beat It, Van Halen type of a moment where apparently he just walked in and did it. I literally just played that, like, how would I, thinking about what chords were coming in it, and I played it, and Brian was like, that's it. And I was like, are you sure? And I was like, should I throw maybe a little, when I do it for real, should I throw a little sort of a slight tone into it and stuff. And he's like, a slight sort of phasery sounds like. He's like, yeah, I think that'd be really cool. That's basically my contribution to that, minus obviously producing it and making it sound how he imagined it, with that wonderful Rhodes tone that Frank has on that and stuff. So you're right on the thought behind the song, but it's also that about that little bracket of people that both me and Brian fall into, which is if you were born between 78 or 77 and 83, you are not a millennial or a Gen X. You are a Xennial. It's this one little grouping of people that had a completely analog childhood and then a completely digital adulthood. Essentially, you know, my first cell phone that you could call a cell phone of anything was 18, right? And so we're in that weird world where we're just not quite, we're definitely not millennials, and we're definitely not Gen Xers. Gen X is that what it's called. We're somewhere in between, and that's what the lyrics are basically about, and how we've handled that massive change in lifestyle from my childhood and teens to what the current teenager is living through today. It's very, very nice lyrics. I'm very happy with that song, even though I'm not singing on it. Is my only regret.
Well, no, and look, I think that one's going to be great live. I think it's going to really capture an audience. Hopefully, when you guys tour this album, you'll be throwing that into the set. We'll do one more, and then I still have dozens of questions, but we're gonna go down and listen to one more, because the album concludes with Unobtanium, and I want to give people everyone watching just a sample of that. We talked a little bit at the front, so if you're catching us in the middle, we'll catch you up on what Unobtanium is. But I want people to get a little sample of it, so let's give that one a shot. I love this feel off the front of it. For me, it's interesting. We go through the album and we get to Unobtanium, which, inadvertently has a sci-fi connection. And then it starts out, I mean, to me, and again, you have a drummer who came from country western, which is, it's got this world feel. It's got like a Peter Gabriel-esque kind of feeling toward the beginning of it, right? Like a South African rhythmic vibe. And then you bring in some strings and it sounds a little Southeast Asian. And it just keeps kind of building in a sci-fi kind of way, unintentionally, when you were not realizing that Unobtanium was a plot point in Avatar.
Yeah, I had no idea until I was told after the fact. Like we were saying earlier, the Unobtanium is just a metaphor, and it's for that thing we all strive for. We all have something we're trying to get that we can't ever really reach. And if we do, and the few people that do reach their Unobtanium, the second they achieve or get whatever it is they want, something else becomes their Unobtanium. So there's always an Unobtanium in everybody's life, whether it's a certain goal of likes nowadays, or whatever, or it's a guitar you've always wanted, or it's a some book you've always wanted to write. Whatever it may be, everybody has one. And I really liked writing the lyrics for this song because I love the melody line in this song. It's very dark, and as you say, it's sort of Egyptianish kind of. It's got an Egyptian-y feel. It's very, and so the whole song is, again, it's obviously the epic too, because the difference with this album is we decided to take all of the best parts of our previous albums, but make the songs shorter on purpose, with vinyl in mind, of course, and also that we just wanted to have 5 to 6 minute songs versus 9 to 10, like every song nearly ends up being when we write it, you know. So it was nice to have the one song we could just go, no, we want to do more of this part, you know.
Yeah. You know, you just mentioned the vinyl aspect and keeping it tight for vinyl. But as you guys just mentioned on your socials, I think within the last couple of days, for those who don't have a turntable, if they purchase an Unobtanium digitally, they get a bonus surprise. Tell us about that.
Yeah, actually, there's 2 cool surprises right now. A friend of ours, I want to give a big shout out to Mark and Rena Monforti at progrock.com. They heard basically just a budgeting thing for us. It's like we're all so busy and we all have other projects that we're funding. So the funding of Cyberiam kind of falls on me at the moment, and for the most part. And I was like, I just have too much stuff to buy for like Semple, and like we've got a whole summer's worth of merchandise to buy and all this kind of stuff. It's like, we can only do vinyl this time. And I was like, we really wanted to do vinyl because we'd never done vinyl on all previous 6 products. So it was like, let's just do vinyl and digital. And that was the plan. But thanks to Mark, he decided, no, we got to change this. So he actually bought the vinyl or the CDs for us to sell for us. So essentially we're already paid up, and it's great and it's amazing thanks to him, because he believes in the band so strongly. He is selling those and for us. So it's incredible. So now we not only have the CDs where you get the Wrong Turn as the bonus track, but the digital seal also has the bonus track. And if I'm not mistaken, if you buy the vinyl or the CD, you get the digital for free anyway.
Oh, cool.
I think, don't quote me on that, but it's all on the Bandcamp, which is where you should go, you know, the Cyberiam.bandcamp.com. It's all on there. That's sort of Brian's realm still. I haven't delved in as much other than to do the artwork for it. So I do believe that you're getting a pretty good deal regardless of which one you get, you know.
And I'll drop the links for all your socials and Bandcamp and all that stuff down in the description below. So you're looking at the lovely Keith Semple, but look below him for that information so you can connect with him.
Don't go too far down. I'm not wearing anything from the waist down. I'm just letting you know.
So let's talk about touring the album. Are you guys hitting the road this summer? Are we going to get a chance to see you guys in a bunch of cities around the country?
Not summer. Again, all of our schedules get in the way of this band because we're successful in other formats. You know, Tommy runs an entire university basically and runs the entire entertainment side of it. You know, Brian has a full-time job now. Frank is a principal at a huge school in Chicago. Like, I mean, and obviously I'm music all the time. So to find time to do it is really tough. We were thinking fall, but even then we would have to split up the tours to like East Coast, West Coast, and so on. So we're thinking we'd do like Florida up and round Canada down to Chicago, and then we would do Texas over and up and finish in Seattle, Vancouver, and so on. So there'd be those 2 things, and it'd be sort of a 10-day each, 12-day each. That's the only way we can really tour as a band at the moment. And it's the toughest part of this whole thing for us, is to try to find time to get out on the road for everyone. And obviously after our amazing experiences with Riverside and Pineapple Thief, like, we realized not only can we do this, but the response to our music live was incredible. I mean, think about it. 99% of the people in those venues had never heard of us, but they really reacted to us. And I'm like, we know we have a product that people would like if they hear it. So that's exciting, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm one of those people. I had, I was there for Riverside, and I ran into you, and I was just blown away, and that was the start of this conversation, really. So look, again, don't go too far down because he's not wearing any pants, but those links below are ways to support this band, and I brought this up in other conversations. It's so important today. A like is an endorphin rush. I mean, we certainly want likes, but for artists, it's how you support them. Purchasing music. Keith just mentioned he's got tons of summer merch coming. Go on their site, buy some merch, wear a shirt, do things that help support them, or get their music in front of your friends. There are a lot of choices out there, but we have to, as an audience, keep supporting musicians today because the business has changed so dynamically. So please do support the Cyberiam, as well as, because we're going to take a turn in our conversation, because you may see this, may or may not, because we're kind of in these little vertical slats here on the video, but over Keith's shoulder is a light bulb, and part of that is because his lyric writing. Oh, there we go. Look at that. His lyric writing led him to, as I understand it, the Semple Truth podcast. Tell us about the story of how you got there and what it's all about, and we'll include that down below as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been very into what people consider to be the controversial topics in life, politics, religion, I don't know, social concepts, whatever way you want to look at it. And Cyberiam has allowed me to write about a huge chunk of those in depth, like, for example, the most recent one would be Double X off the new album. That is just a total, excuse my French again, but it's the total fuck you to the people that took away women's rights this last year. It was being written at that point, and the lyrics I completely scrapped and wrote in a day about that. So Double X is referring to the jeans Double X, and that's the good thing about Cyberiam. I write a whole song. 2020 Visionary on the original album is written all about the ideas of the laws of logic, but also the idea of, imagine if like Bernie Sanders had to become president instead of Trump, like where we could have possibly been, fingers crossed, as a society, and Historian on the first album is written all about, how if you're the one who wins the war, you're the one who writes the history. And it's a whole, so all these concepts you're not going to write about in a pop song, but then I decided, what, I want to do a podcast about all this stuff, and I don't really care. I'm so comfortable as a human being. I don't care if somebody doesn't like me for it, or if somebody disagrees with me. They're welcome to come and chat to me about it. But the Semple Truth allowed me to discuss them in real time, and I've had quite a bit of luck really with it hasn't really taken off in the sense of what people consider nowadays yet. I would say yet, but I have had the privilege of talking with some of the most important people in those fields. I talked with Hemant Mehta, who's the friendly atheist, he's known as, and he has, he's been influential in the fight against, to keep church and state separate. And then somebody, again, like Andrew Seidel, who's written, actually his book's right here, this The Founding Myth, which is an amazing book, just talking about, sort of Christian nationalism and the threat that it poses to America. And so it's really nice to be able to get to dive into that, even though at the moment, like I was saying, my time to do it is I've finished season 2, and I just have to take a break for a little while before I can get in and do more. And I'll probably do a bunch and get it ready, because it's just so time consuming, as you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that we have this ability to provide content like this. And we do it from small studios, from homes. People do these from cars, you name it. But there's a little bit more work involved. So, it's not automagical. So I totally understand that and can appreciate that. Let's talk a little about some of the your influences, right? I'm always interested in,
Mm.
you know, we're all pieces of someone or something that have touched us in our life. Who have been some of the biggest influences on you in your music and art, that you really have, you know, taken a piece of, maybe added it, maybe changed it stylistically a little bit, but there's something there? Who are a few of those people that you've tapped into, or either met or followed or appreciated, that ends up there?
For me, the big start, if we just stick to prog for now, the two or three main ones would be, at first at least, was Dream Theater. Obviously, it's sort of where I started listening to prog, and Pink Floyd, and then actually Sting. I bought an album called Mercury Falling, and it just blew my mind that pop music could be that intricate. There's a song called Hung My Head, which is a 9/8 time, and I was trying to play the drums to it one day, realizing, oh my goodness, I have to really think my way through the independence of this track. Of course, I found out later it's Vinnie Colaiuta, you know, the guy who's just out of this world good as a drummer, one of the best drummers on planet Earth. Those were big influences. And so all my earlier prog that nobody's heard, by the way, it's except the people I grew up with, has a very Dream Theater influence. But then Porcupine Tree really changed my mind on prog. I realized, now everybody had been listening to Porcupine Tree for probably 15 years. I only learned of them after I had written a lot of the first Cyberiam album. And then I realized I had people compare some songs I'd written and stuff to them. And I was like, you do realize I'd never heard that song until after I wrote that song. And sometimes people say like, oh, you kind of sound a little bit too much like them here. And I'm like, but I'd never physically heard the song you're talking about. So I take that as a huge compliment. I'm a massive Porcupine Tree fan now. Like I really like their work.
I'm going to tell you, you know, I've taken the new album out, and I've got your other ones, and one of the first things I started thinking about is, wow, I can feel some Porcupine Tree here. I feel those guys in this. You've definitely got shades of Porcupine in in this album, which I think is great, because I think it's important to honor the people we get that influence and that inspiration from. So I think you did a great job with that.
Yeah, and I'm one of these people where I'm happy to claim my influences where they are. Like it's at no point, this is the difference. So at no point have I ever written a riff or written a piece of music and thought, I've written this because it sounds like X. It's just been later I go, oh, that reminds me of something. What does that remind me of? You see what I mean? And that's just the way, like, so clearly there's influences subconsciously, and it's only later that somebody else might even point it out to you. So I kind of like that. Porcupine Tree, what it was for me about them was that I realized you could be alternative sounding, but be proggy. So you didn't have to be a Symphony X or a Dream Theater. You could sound like Smashing Pumpkins, basically, but also be prog. And I was like, wow, that is where I want to sit. So, because I've always done mainstream music otherwise, so I wanted to have my prog stuff have a little edge of darkness and a little edge of so we always tune down a half step and stuff just to give it that more darker feel. And I'll choose a diminished chord often over a regular minor chord and things like that, and I try to purposely go dark when the opportunity arises, rather than stay clean and poppy, which is what I've done in the past. But then I'm also influenced in my prog by bands that aren't prog. So like, it's probably funny to mention these two bands in the same sentence, but Bon Jovi are a huge influence of mine. Now I'm talking not the early Bon Jovi everybody knows, but the mid-90s Bon Jovi that nobody knows. And the reason nobody knows it is because they didn't write hits on purpose. They wrote for themselves. And there's an album called These Days, which is arguably, in my opinion, one of the best rock albums ever written or produced. I think it's about as close to perfection as you can get. It's also when his voice was at its best and so on. And so I hear influences of that. And actually, I'll be honest, again, subconscious now, I'm aware of it later, but in, what's the song? Wild Things in the Connected album. I'm playing a C, D, and an E minor shape on the guitar, and I didn't realize till after that it comes from the song These Days in Bon Jovi song. Not literally, it's there. You would never put the two songs together and hear the connection, but I hear the connection when I realize how I phrased it. I slide up from the C bar open chord to the D5 open chord, and I slide up at a particular time in the chord. I'm like, that's where I got that from. Didn't do it on purpose, but that's where I heard it. And actually, I want to give you guys for the prog listeners out there, you will not be disappointed, trust me, there's a British band called Thunder who are, I have literally got a tattoo of them on my arm, so that's how big a fan I am. Oh, I'll open it up. But they are a London-based band, and I think he has the best rock voice in the entire world. This is their kind of logo with the British flag, the Union Jack on it, and his name's Danny Bowes, and he sounds like, the only way to describe it would be sounds like Dave Coverdale mixed with Stevie Wonder. It's like a white guy with a rock voice that also sounds as soulful as Stevie Wonder does, with all the licks and the control. He is a huge influence on my singing. So when you hear me do something that you might be like, oh, I like how he sings there, or does a lick, a lot of that comes from my respect for Danny Bowes as a singer. So you'd never guess you'd squeeze those 5 or 6 bands together,
Wow. No, that and that segues us perfectly into the next thing I was going to ask you. Besides Thunder, which I imagine you listen to fairly often, I like to open people up to other bands. Of course, they need to go out and buy the new Cyberiam album, and then go buy the previous 2. You got to go do that. But who are 3 artists? And it doesn't have to be prog. Okay, these are what you're enjoying right now. 3 or 4 artists, you're listening to some of their music, and you're really digging it right now. That you feel that it's inspired you, or it gets you moving to the beat that you think other people might enjoy. Sampling.
Wow. I came across a band recently called Big Wreck, as in WRE, Big Wreck. I've had the privilege recently of doing some big pop shows with the lead singer of NXS. So I've been working with him, and the guitar player who plays for Enrique Iglesias, and he's put me onto this band called Big Wreck. So they sound like rocky, but they've got this twist, and they're not quite pop and they're not quite rock, and I like it. It sits well with me. But honestly, there's some songs that have come out recently by different people. Like, for example, I know it sounds silly, but like Adele's song Easy on Me, it's just brilliant. It's a brilliant song. It's beautiful. I would love to sing it myself sometime and record myself doing an acoustic version of it, just to, show off a little, I guess. Why not? And then it's not so much what I'm listening to now. It's what I will decide to listen to if I want to listen to music, if that makes sense. But if we stick with prog, for me, I keep going back to a band at the minute called, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the name, but they sound very much like Us at times. I have to pull it up to remember. I can't believe this. Lonely Robot. I don't know if you've heard of Lonely Robot. No. They sound like much more Pink Floydish than we do. It's very big and melodic, but they have moments of other stuff. But their melody lines are so beautiful. Like, Lonely Robot is a band you have to go listen to. If you like Porcupine Tree or any of those bands, they are a band I would highly recommend. The new Extreme album is pretty badass. He's probably in my top 3. Well, he is in my top 3 favorite guitar players of all time. I think Nuno Betancourt is a master. What else do I have on here? I was actually listening to Taylor Swift's new album because I wanted to see if I felt it warranted 300 million streams in a day. Let's just say I don't think it warrants 300 million streams in a day, but I do understand why people feel the way they do. And if you really want to get into it, I really like, as an artist, John Baptiste, who was the guy that was doing the band on Stephen Colbert for a long time. There's a clip everybody should look up, and it's that Chris Wallace guy that used to do Fox News. He interviews him at the piano, and he says, "Can you maybe show me how genres can interact?" And I swear he starts playing, what's the... oh my God, I'm blanking. Beethoven. And he's doing it. And then he changes it into a blues song, into a gospel song, into a jazz song, all in 4 bars. He just starts changing it. And you can see Wallace's chin on the floor at how incredible this guy's ear is. Like, I don't think I've heard a arguably better musician in front doing something live in a long time. It was out of this world.
I'm going to have to get the link. And you know what? For those of you who have stuck with us this long, you're going to get the chance to see that too, because we'll stick that one down below. And that leads us to my wrap-up question. I'm always curious. If there was one artist out there that you had a chance to collaborate, and they could be living or past, who would it be and why? Why do you what are your thoughts on why that would be a great collaboration?
It's so tough because I think I've screwed myself for that answer because I like so many styles. Like, it would have to be 3 because I'd have to pick one from each of the genres that I love, right? Because if it's going to be pop, it would have to be Bryan Adams, because I have grown up idolizing him as much as anybody as I ever would idolize someone. Don't like that terminology, but a lot of my early career is based on him and how he just plays and plays and plays and writes great song after great song after great song. And even though maybe he isn't huge in the zeitgeist right now in America, he's still playing stadiums all over the world. He's still massive. His voice is still as good as it was in 85, 86. Like, I don't know how, but 40 years later, he still has that perfect range and everything. So I'd love to write songs with him and perform with him live. I would have to say, I don't know if I want to say Steven Wilson or I want to say Porcupine Tree in general, because I know he is the sort of brains behind it. But then I did get to go on tour with Gavin Harrison and interact with him and see just how much of a master at his craft he was. So to be able to maybe write a few riffs with either of those guys would be pretty incredible, because they're incredible. And then I just would love to sing. The movie Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg, where he gets to become like Judas. I know it's not Judas Priest, but I think it's the story. He gets to become the lead singer of the band he's always loved. I always had literal dreams that would happen to me with this Thunder band, that I would get asked to go, because I obviously knew all the words and could sing the notes and stuff. I'd get asked to do it when he wasn't able to do it anymore. But he's, 60 something, in his late 60s now, and can still sing it. So I don't think there's any hope for me, but that would be an epic thing for me to do as well. I think that's it. That's a really tough one.
Maybe that's your unobtainium. So,
I like that.
We brought it back.
Ask me that question again in a year's time, and I'll see if I give you the same answer, because I don't know if I would, honestly.
In a year or so time, maybe we'll have another Cyberiam album to talk about. Keith, this has been incredible. We could probably go on for a couple of hours. And for all of you who have stuck with us this long, thank you. I really appreciate you showing up for our conversations. Keep up with Almost Famous Magazine. Keep up with the Cyberiam. Buy them, support them. Get the albums. See them. If you're in the Chicagoland area, you know, that's where Keith's based, you know, see his band out and about. But definitely, you know, we're appreciative. Keith, I'm appreciative. This has been a great conversation. Everybody, you know, keep supporting this channel, subscribe. We've got great interviews coming up from a wide variety of people within the music business and a great range of conversations. So Keith, thanks so much. It's been great seeing you. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Scott. Loved it. Thank you.